Okay, just so to continue where we left off, here's an example of the long walk. Some of those that were involved in that to relocate to the new lands. They were forced there by Kit Carson. Um, and they were only there for 4 years, and then they could move back to some of their native land, but that land was greatly reduced in size. We look at the Nez Perce. They were moved to a reservation in Idaho. Most of them were actually um, they were actually cattlemen and breeders. They had pretty much assimilated to what most Americans in the western frontier were doing, but they had land. And so Chief Joseph and his tribe had actually tried to escape to Canada to try to get away from um, some of the Union troops that were pursuing them in search of new land. They were stopped just short of the border. And that is where we get the famous quote, from where the sun now stands, I will fight no more forever. His people and him were moved back to Oklahoma and a southern part of Idaho. He went to Washington, D.C. 2 or 3 times trying to get some of his land back and his rights back as a tribe, and he was unsuccessful in that. Sitting Bull had been, as the Great Sioux Chief, he had been considered a threat to Western expansion. So they had decided they were going to arrest him. In the confrontation, he was killed by the U.S. Army, and so a group of Sioux fled to the Badlands of South Dakota. Um, they were around an area today known as Wounded Knee, and we have what took place then is a cavalry unit came in. The Wounded Knee people that were there were severely outgunned and definitely at a disadvantage. More than 100, some people say close to 200 men, women, and children of the Sioux died there at Wounded Knee. The picture on this side is an example of Wounded Knee. I have a few more pictures here. Part of the reason for Sitting Bull was to actually stop the ghost dance that had started to become popular, and that was one of the reasons why Sitting Bull's arrest was ordered by the U.S. Army. Um, the massacre was quite tragic because most of them were even left there for a couple days before they were even able to be buried. The army just destroyed them and left them. There was no mercy at all. Here's the present day sign there. You can go there today. It's only about maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours from Rapid City. Shows a lot of our local history. No matter how wrong it is, it's still a part of history. There's an example here from an 1890 paper. I thought it was interesting that they said he was shot by Indian police, almost like tribal police that we would consider today, but it was actually part of the U.S. Army. The government overall encouraged assimilation. Many hoped that the natives would become farmers and assimilate. Assimilate means to adopt the culture of the whites. During this time, they passed the Dawes General Allotment Act, and this took the power of land away from the tribes and gave it particularly to the U.S. government. Um, the attempt was that they wanted them to become private property owners, disseminate the idea of a tribal ownership of land and farmers. Families were allotted 160 acres, just like the Homestead Act, but they couldn't sell them for 25 years because they figured in 25 years they would assimilate and then they wouldn't sell their lands. Well, they actually decided incorrectly because they were land grabbers. That happened about 25 years later that took a lot of the land from Native Americans for very reduced prices, or they didn't realize um, they were selling their land for such a reduced price. And that's why we see some of the reservations today in chunks. They're because native land was sold at that time. In fact, part of the ground where the Wounded Knee Massacre is actually owned by a private party. There's been a lot of talk of whether that would be bought out by some of the major Hollywood actors and given back to the Oglala Lakota. And that was one of those cells of land that was given out from the Dawes General Allotment Act. The whole idea of assimilation was perpetuated through boarding schools and trying to basically make them into farmers or the contemporary American life. So hopefully this gives you a good overview of notes 10.1 and gave you enough time to take the notes that are required for your notebook from this.